Over the years, I have painted a lot of Chibi, and if I'm being honest with you, I get asked that probably the most on this channel is how do I attack Chibi? What makes me interested in painting them, and can we paint Chibi together? So one of the things we're going to do in this video is we're just going to sit down and look at least one process. This is one of my processes for painting Chibi. So Chibi is pretty simple. I'm going to do a zenithal prime here. This is a standard procedure that I do with pretty much everything I paint these days. Just start with an airbrush and take some black primer here. This is Vallejo surface primer. Coat the whole thing, and again the emphasis is on the shadows and the crevices of the model. And then we go ahead and do a zenithal prime with Vallejo gray. I really like doing Vallejo gray, especially over this black primer. You can see that black primer has a little bit of a sheen to it, and that kind of don't like that at all. So I follow up with the gray, and I get it over most of the model, and then start to concentrate it towards the tops of the model there with the airbrush. Next, we're going to do some color blocking, and this is where the painting really starts. Now, you can do this without the airbrush. I'm just lazy, I guess, so I'm going to paint it with the airbrush, and you can follow along with the colors below. You can see that I use a lot of different manufacturers of colors and different things through the airbrush. The only thing that is consistent is I always thin with Vallejo airbrush thinner. It just makes life easier. It's a very simple product to use, and you can do any of your miniature paints and get it through a 0.3 or a 0.2 needle with that airbrush thinner. This glacial blue here, this is giving me like a top level highlight, which is really cool. This is a great color for lighting effects and a fantastic undercoat for white. And then I'm going to come in with P3 Armor Wash. This paint is going to come up quite a bit, especially with painting Chibi and doing non-metallic metals. It's just such a versatile wash. I use it for a lot more than just the metal here. But right now I'm just using it as a tint. And then I'm going to spray an undercoat of Rosy skin on the face just to block that color in. Again, we're going to be spending a lot of time on the face. And probably the largest single portion of the model is the hair. So I'm going to do a base coat and a highlight on the hair. Again, you can do this with your brush, and if you're joining me for the paint day at Comic Quest, we are going to be doing a lot of this painting with the brush. I'll just highlight that with a little squid pink. Same concept as before, just kind of aim the paint towards the top of the model. And now we're ready to do the brush painting. Now, the most important thing with the brush painting and Chibi is the eyes, and that's where I get the most questions. I'm going to start with that P3 Armor Wash again, just kind of lay it there in the around the edges of the eyes. Now, this is going to take a little bit longer to dry, but what I like about P3 Armor Wash and using a wash for the eyes instead of just painting in the whole eye black is it's really going to be a little more definitive in terms of showing you where those borders really are instead of painting the whole eye black. The downside is it does take a little longer to dry, so kind of as a side, I'm going to use it to wash this non-metallic axe and actually feather it out. You can see that's what I'm doing with the brush right there. I just taking a damp brush without any wash on it and just kind of feathering out those edges while the wash dries. So as it's starting to dry, now we're starting to get a little confidence, and I can paint the white in. That's very important when you're putting the white in, not to let the white ride into those crevices there. So you can see I'm doing a little cleanup. I just don't want it to cover up that black border, and you will have to paint the white in a couple of times to get it bright and even. Now, with that border on the bottom, the main thing is you want it to leave the border in, but the border should be thinner on the bottom of the eyes than the top of the eyes, particularly with female models, because this arena champion, she has like eyelashes or eyeliner or whatever. So we're going to leave that thicker on the top than on the bottom. And again, multiple coats of the white. Don't gob paint on there. Try not to, because you're still going to want to thin your paint reasonably and just get a solid coat of white on there. Once that white is starting to dry, we're going to paint in the bulk of the middle of the eye here with Andrea blue. This is a Vallejo GameColour. And you know, this is where it's really fun painting Chibi, because you can choose a different colors of eyes. You're going to want a color that's actually, you know, not that opaque. And blues, deep blues, are good at this because the color is intense, but they're not very opaque. They're not solid, in other words. You can still kind of see through them. So that's going to take the majority of the eye. Then I'm going to dot in the center of the eye with a black, or I just use a black gray instead of black. I try not to paint with like straight black these days. Black gray is a fantastic, versatile color. It's kind of hard to find, so you might use charcoal. There's a number of other colors you can be using instead. Now the finishing touch here with a Chibi eye is that white dot. Okay, so you're going to do a black dot in the center, and then you're going to put a pair of white dots up towards the corner and top of the eyes where you would expect the light to shine. This is really what sets apart the entire Chibi eye thing. And there's lots of variants. You could do one eye, you can do one dot in the top corner and one dot in the bottom corner. Some people do that. I just do one dot in each of the top corner and make sure that they're lined up with each eye. So that's like key, really, for doing Chibi eyes, making sure those dots line up correctly. So now we're going to box out the color of the eye with some heavy skin tone. This is kind of standard procedure for me. I do that to shape the eyes, and I use heavy skin tone because, not because I like the color, but more so because it's a great undertone for flesh, and it actually covers extremely well. So if I need to cut a nice clean edge around those eyes, this is perfect for that. So that's kind of what I do that's a little bit different than some people, is I will paint the eyes in first, and then I will actually use this undercoat to clean up the edges of the eyes, and it just works out really well. Then I start mixing some cadmium skin into that, and this is where I'm going to spend a lot of time painting this model. Is again, the faces and bases is what I say, and with Chibi it's really eyes and faces is really what makes the model. So I'm mixing it up in with cadmium skin, but I'm not leaving too much of that undertone showing, because there's not a lot of definition on these Chibi models. Real rounded surface on the face, and you know, it is a like anime style, so you're gonna want, you know, reasonably fair skin. If that's what you're going for. That's what I'm going for, is reasonably fair skin, actually really fair skin, because I'm going to go from this cadmium and I'm going to start blending it into pale skin towards the end there. And again, I'm just going to keep coming back into it. So pale skin tones coming in, and I'm going to do this a lot in the video. You'll see me keep coming back into it. The main thing here is multiple thin layers. Make sure it's really smooth and really opaque. Even if it seems like redundant, like you're just covering over layer after layer, it's going to look much better in the long term. You don't, again, we're not painting some muscle-bound barbarian. We're not painting something with real huge creases in the skin. Subtlety is important here, and subtlety and smoothness is critical on this model. So take your time right here, especially, you know, if you did a good job on the eyes and you're happy with the eyes, take your time and go slow, because this look is super important. I actually took a little armor wash. I don't know if I've done that yet, but you take a little armor wash and you just kind of let it run into the mouth there, just for a little shading. So now I'm painting the undertone of the top shirt, and the shirt is it's just kind of like a white shirt. She doesn't have sleeves in the art, but it looks like she has sleeves in the miniature anyway. And again, going in with that Glacier blue, and we'll be using that a lot too. So you'll see that the same colors come up several times. It's because these are really versatile colors, and I've come to rely on them a lot. Free plug here for Comic Quest. This is, and most of these paints, the majority of these paints I'm using are available at Comic Quest. So if you want to pick them up during paint day, this is what I would recommend. You can see I was doing the petticoat there. So now I'm going to get just a little bit of blush on the tops of the cheeks, just for a tiny little effect. So I take some Rosy skin and just very, very lightly put it in. And then I'm essentially just going to do a really light brush of the pale skin tone to just kind of feather it out, right? You don't want to have these big rosy cheeks. You just want the tops of the cheeks to have a little bit of that tinge to it. I think it looks fantastic. Now you could, when you are doing the rosy skin, you can mix it with glaze medium, and that's something I would recommend because you don't want it to be totally opaque. You just want a little bit of that tinge in there. But you can see, like, I come back into the skin quite a bit. And I'm going to, again, this is not the last of it. This is the part of the model I'm going to be painting the most, really, is that face. And just building up those layers, making sure that it's smooth every time. And I just want to have a nice, like, clean, crisp look with a little bit of that tinge to it. So now I'm going to make a glaze out of the Andrea blue and glaze medium, and what that's and I'm going to run that into the creases of the dress. That's going to give me a little bit of shadow, and it's just a nice way to get those colors to blend back in with each other. And again, I come back in, do a little more pale flesh and a little more Andrea blue. It's just, I'm just going to keep doing it until I'm totally happy with that face. And again, it can be a lot of layers going in there. Dragon White is going to be the highlight over the Glacier Blue, and we'll be going in with Dragon White. Now, you could use Vallejo Model Color White, you could use Skull White from Citadel. It really doesn't matter. I'm using Reaper Dragon White, again, available at Comic Quest. But yeah, that's one of the things too. White and black are typically difficult to find in your miniature store, especially if you're looking for the Vallejo or Citadel ones. So CQ offers Reaper paints, and I've been switching a lot of my paints to Reaper because I like them quite a lot. So now I'm doing a Warlord purple shade again by mixing that with the glaze. And you can see I drag that into the shadow. And that's the nice thing about glazes is you can start from light and pull into dark, or you can start with the dark and pull into light. And that's what glazing, that's really where glazing really starts to be a much more powerful tool. I spent a lot of time 2 years ago just learning glazes and trying to incorporate glazing into my painting technique. And that's one thing about painting for a number of years is you can challenge yourself to learn new techniques, and like I made it a point back then to work more with glazes. You can see I'm actually working it into the interior of the eye there, because that's nice. It's a nice way to highlight and drag shadow into there. A little more Glacier Blue. This time I'm gonna finish off the bunny ear headband there, and then you will see some Dragon White come back in and highlight that up. So painting Chibi is really, again, it's getting that face right, and getting the face right is getting the eyes down. And it takes practice. It's a little bit of freehand, but it's totally worth it. And once you get with that, getting the eyes down, and you can, work out how you want to do your skin tones, the rest of this is pretty basic stuff. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I didn't do a video on it earlier. Is like there's really not much painting that's outside of a standard painting. But I do feel like a lot of people feel intimidated by it because it's just such a different style. It's not an army dude, it's not a space marine. It's a cartoony looking figure, and people see the eyes and they see the shading and the highlighting, and they think, oh man, it's like this is so different than what I normally paint. And yes, it is different. It's different, and your skill set's a little different, but it shouldn't be that intimidating. So now here I'm actually using a makeup brush to dry brush a little bit of white along the edges of the axe. This is something I normally do with non-metallic metals, because the dry brush is nice because it allows you to get a sharp edge, and it's like feathers out. And if you're doing a dry brush properly, it's not going to leave too much of that like fur texture on it. Time to paint in that big bow. Again, no real science here, just sort of blocking it out. And you can see the model is very well on its way to being completed. But yeah, Chibi is a lot of fun to paint, and it's really rewarding. Especially once you get eyes down, you'll be confident. You'll feel really confident about painting basically anything Chibi. And no bias here except full bias. I love the Soda Pop Chibi. There is no other Chibi in the market that looks like that. They were the first ones in the market. They have a very distinct look, and they are true to anime, folks. And I love it. I love painting it. It's super fun. That's why I painted hundreds of it. And I hope you paint it with me, because it is really, really fun. It's really nice. So now just painting in that dungeon base. So I tend to stay really simple with the bases because it's not really the focus of the model here. Faces and bases is my adage with a lot of other miniatures, but here it's I try to keep it simple because there's so much drawing your eye to the face of this model. Painting little suspenders here. I probably should have painted them Azure, but whatever. And then some black gray on the gloves, the gauntlets. Well, although I went with fingerless gauntlets. I don't know why. It just looked cooler to me. So black gray there. We're almost done though. I mean, there's not much left to do on the model. Honestly, I'm just waiting for that neutral gray to dry so that I can wash it. But you can always come back and do more highlights, and here's some more dragon white going down. That's really nice. When you're working with light colors like that, come back and do it. Like, just periodically come back and hit it with another edge, because it's just going to look better every single time you do it. It's going to give you a cleaner looking model, especially if you had the patience to thin everything down and work with it. A little bunny face on my bunny axe there. Just using some black gray. I'm going to get a little more white on the edge there. Looking pretty good so far. There's really just the only thing left to do is that wash on the base. I'm going to highlight the bow. Just mix a little squid pink in with the gory red. And there, yeah. Finally, I'm going to go ahead and do that wash. And it's a fairly liberal wash over the whole model because you kind of want to tone and fill those cracks in at the same time. Okay, so that's going to do it. I mean, then once that dries, we're going to be all done. Once again, if you can make it, come to Comic Quest March 26th. The specific Chibi stuff is going to happen from 1 to 3. We will probably have some models for you to try out. Okay, so that's going to do it for this video. I want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.